This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hey there, Heather Ho, there's Jeff Kidderdiamond welcoming you to another Sports Catastrophe on the State. And on this day, September 30th, 1989, the Toronto Blue Jays completed one of the biggest comebacks in season in Major League history as they came back from 10 back in the span of July. And in 2 months, they roared to the top of the AL East and won the division and a trip to Oakland for the ALCS. The 1989 Toronto Blue Jays were special and all that. They were coming off a very much drama-filled season in which they had to deal with a lot of things. They had to deal with some free agency things and some draft picks and all that. They even had to lose Cecil Fielder, who went over to Japan to play for the Hanshin Tigers. They even had Bob Brenly on their roster at one time. So anyway, the regular season was huge. The Blue Jays had some gigantic moves in place for the 1989 season, hoping to win the AL East. April would be huge. Kelly Gruber became the first Blue Jay to hit for the cycle, as in getting a single, double, home run, and triple in the same game. And then the Blue Jays, for the first time in many moons, Pat Gillick would make his first trade in 605 days, in almost 2 years. On April 30th, shockingly trading Jesse Barfield to the New York Yankees for Al Leiter, because they thought that Rob Ducey was ready. The guy from Cambridge, Ontario, would be an everyday outfielder. Unfortunately, though, it wouldn't work out that well. And Junior Felix came out of frickin' nowhere and helped the Jays out. So Barfield being traded away was huge. All that for Al Leiter. Although Leiter would be a welcome addition, it wouldn't be till like 92 before Leiter got cool. The Blue Jays were in trouble. They were 12-24, last in the AL East. So they decided to do the one thing that they had never done in history: fire a manager mid-season. So Jimmy Williams was fired for Cito Gaston, who had several chances to become a manager. Fortunately, though, Cito, even though he wanted to be a temporary thing, and people were thinking about Lou Piniella or even Terry Bevington as the new manager, Cito stayed on. And it also helped that Junior Felix did well. The Blue Jays would close Exhibition Stadium in late May '89 by beating the White Sox, the team that they faced in the first game at Exhibition Stadium, weirdly enough. However, Cito's turn from interim manager to full-time manager was huge, because on June 4th, 1989, the Blue Jays came back from 10-0 down to beat the Red Sox 13-11 in 12 innings, and Junior Felix had a great series with a couple of home runs, including the 2-run home run that gave the Jays the lead in the 12th for good. The next day, the Jays would play at the Sky Dome, their first game, losing to Milwaukee, but who cared? Of course, '89 was also remembered as the day that Dave Stieb came 1 out away from pitching a perfect game against the Yankees, and Roberto Kelly on a 2-0 pitch cracked a double into left field. An RBI single by Cecil happened, but the Jays won. It made Stieb have the third time in 2 years that he blew a no-hitter / perfect game. So anyway, the Blue Jays had it all and all that. Baltimore was the bigger surprise package, because Baltimore, let's face it, had a terrible start in 1988. They actually started at 0-21, which is hard to do nowadays. But the Orioles came back and they almost won the division. It was like, holy crow. That would have been huge. And Frank Robinson definitely was a good manager. So the Blue Jays also made a big trade on the trade deadline, picking up Mookie Wilson from the Mets for Jeff Musselman. And they took Lee Masilli off waivers from the Mets, so a pair of former Mets would join the Blue Jays. John Olerud would be drafted in 1989. But anyway, the Blue Jays had gone to their final regular season series of 3 games against the Orioles with a lot of things on their mind. Blue Jays were up by 1 game with 3 to play Orioles had to win all 3 games to win the division. If the Orioles won 2 out of 3, then the Blue Jays and Orioles would have to play a 1-game playoff in Baltimore on the following Monday. But all the Blue Jays needed to do was win 2. The previous night, on Friday the 29th, as midnight struck in Toronto, the Blue Jays in the 11th inning hit a looping single for an RBI, and the Blue Jays won 2-1. So, it's 2:30 in the afternoon on a Saturday, September 30th, 1989. Why 2:30 being a weird start time? Well, because of one NBC. NBC, since 1947, at the time, would be broadcasting baseball and were the exclusive baseball team of things for Saturday baseball. ABC would do Sunday/Monday games, but NBC would always do their Saturday game of the week. Unfortunately, out of nowhere, CBS took home a $1 billion bid. Yes, that was in 1989 dollars, to win the chance to broadcast Saturday afternoon games. So NBC, for the first time in 4+ decades, would not be broadcasting Saturday afternoon baseball, or any baseball for that matter. CBS had the whole package. ABC wouldn't be able to broadcast baseball either. Fortunately for ABC, they would broadcast the 1989 World Series. NBC would be doing the LCSs. So on the final Saturday game of the week on NBC, it was Orioles Blue Jays for the division. Blue Jays won the first game, meaning that Baltimore would have to win Saturday and Sunday to force a 1-game playoff. A Blue Jays win on either day of the weekend, game over. They would win the division. So it was up to Dave Johnson for Baltimore to save them. Now, Dave Johnson was not actually supposed to start that game. Johnson was actually not supposed to be a starter. It was supposed to be Pete Harnzich. Remember him? Astro fans will remember him because of that big Baltimore-Houston trade for the one Glenn Davis. So Dave Johnson would be the starter against Jimmy Key of the Blue Jays. And the starting lineups were this: Phil Bradley in left for Baltimore, then Stan Jefferson in right, Cal Ripken at short, Reddy Milligan at first, Craig Worthington third base, Mickey Tettleton DHing, Mike Devereaux center field, Bob Melvin at catcher, and Tim Hewlett second base. Blue Jays were countered with Lloyd Bosby in center, Mookie in left, McGriff at first, George Bell DHing, Tony Fernandez at short, Ernie Witt catching, Kelly Gruber at third, Nelson Lariano at second, and Junior Felix would play right field. The Blue Jays would strike first on an RBI single by George Bell, scoring Mosby, and then in the third, Cal Ripken with a ground rule double to score Phil Bradley, and then Reddy Milligan with an RBI single to score Ripken. And then Phil Bradley hit an RBI single to score Mike Devereaux, making it 3-1 Orioles. It looked good. Dave Johnson was playing superbly. Steve Finley would come into the 7th inning to replace Stan Jefferson in right field. Yep, he was also part of that Houston-Baltimore trade for the one of Glenn Davis. And also Curt Schilling. People forget that Curt Schilling was a Baltimore Oriole. I almost forgot. Regardless, in the bottom of the 8th inning, the Blue Jays were hitting hard. Lariano took a 4-pitch walk from Dave Johnson. Baltimore went to the bullpen and took Kevin Hickey out. There. So Hickey would come in to pitch, and then Junior Felix would be pinch hit for by Manny Lee. And then, weirdly enough, in the middle of the count back to Manny Lee, Frank Robinson made the weird move and decided to yank Williamson, to yank Hickey for Mark Williamson. Unfortunately, though, it didn't seem like a good move at the time, because Williamson was the guy who gave up that 11th inning single that scored the Blue Jays winning run. So Rob Ducey, after Manny Lee walked, Ducey would come in and pinch run. Lloyd Bosby would try to bunt, and it worked. He got thrown at first, Lariano got to third, Ducey to second. So it's Mookie Wilson's turn, and hit an RBI single to left. Now, of course, the previous day, Baltimore ruled the decision to pitch to Mosby and not intentionally walk him, as Mosby hit an RBI single. So Mosby with a ground ball, and then Mookie Wilson came in, RBI single to score Lariano, Ducey to third. And then on a 2-2 count, McGriff took a single to right field, base hit, 3-2 Sorry, 3-3 tie, scoring Ducey. Mookie got to third base on the throw. So George Bell on an 0-1 pitch hit a fly ball to right field, caught, and then Finley could not get the runner out, so it worked. Sacrifice fly, 4-3 Blue Jays. Fernandez would ground out. Tom Hankey would come in, as he always does, as the closer. Rob Ducey would play right field. Mickey Tettleton, strikeout. Joe Orsulak came into the game to pinch hit and ground ball out. It was now up to Larry Sheets, who pinch hit for Bob Melvin. And Bob Costas on the NBC Game of the Week would remind us the Blue Jays were 10 back. And then after Hankey at 5:34 p.m. Eastern Time struck out Larry Sheets, Costas proclaimed, "The Blue Jays are Oakland bound." And fans at the Sky Dome were going ballistic. Were there fans on the field? A couple. If you see the celebrations and all that, where the Blue Jays are huddling around each other, you see some guy in a coat, a red and blue piping and all that coming into the game. And it seemed like he was there forever, but I think security got him. But yeah, Costas said how good the Blue Jay fans were in not really running into the field after the Blue Jays clinched the AL East. So the Blue Jays did it. The fans were happy. Skydome, if Skydome was around for the entire season and not just after June, they would have hit 4 million fans because it was like huge and all that. The Skydome holding all those fans and all that. And it was somber for NBC because that was the last time they would broadcast a regular season game ever. Well, until 1994 when they had the baseball network kerfuffle. So how did the Blue Jays do in the ALCS? Well, if you take out Ricky Henderson for Oakland, the Jays would have had a better chance, as they got taken out in 5 games. Ricky Henderson just was a one-man show, stealing bases, stealing runs, getting on the Blue Jays' nerves and all that. It was just the Ricky Henderson show. Yeah, the Blue Jays lost the ALCS, but I think they would have lost it in 89 anyway. So that was only the second time the Blue Jays made the playoffs. The first time was 85 when they won the division on the final day of the season. Second last day, sorry. But then they choked that 3-1 series lead to the Royals in the LCS. If it was pre-1985 LCS rules, best of 5, the Blue Jays would have went to the World Series, played St. Louis. Maybe, just maybe, the Blue Jays would have won that World Series. And also, let's not forget that Ozzie Smith's Game 5 home run in the LCS would have been a pennant-winning home run instead of just a game winner. So yeah, the Blue Jays did well. And in 1990, they were chasing the division, lost it on the last day when Boston beat the White Sox thanks to Tom Bernanski's seemingly innocent sliding catch in right field. Blue Jays were back to the World Series playoffs in 91, winning the AL East on a dramatic RBI single by Joe Carter. And the Blue Jays would take on the Twins, who they were good against in the regular season, but in the playoffs, the Twins just turned it around and won in 5 games. It didn't help that Joe Carter was injured. And then, of course, Blue Jays won the World Series in 92-93, so that's just all I've got. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond, I do